Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. My name is Maxine. I have Avoidant Personality Disorder and ADHD, and that's what we talk about here. Today I want to talk about my childhood and young adult years and what I think sort of contributed to my development of this personality disorder. I was not diagnosed with ADHD until I was 28 years old, but of course we know that that is something that you're born with. So although I didn't know, I was not aware that that was something that I struggled with. I was. So just to start at the very beginning, I was born the second out of 3 children to married parents. My parents are still married. And I have a brother that's 3 years older and a sister that is 3 years younger. And I was always known for being a painfully shy child. Very shy and very high anxiety from the time I was very small. I did not want to talk to people that were not in my immediate family, and I have a memory of being at the end of the year assembly in genuinely maybe first grade, and just that was the worst day because I was a good student, so I won awards, but I was so nervous about well, if they call my name, what am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to just stand up? Am I supposed to walk up there? Am I supposed to walk up there and then stay for a photo or just come right back to my seat? I was just from the time I was a small child, my brain was working overtime, it seems to keep me safe and to keep me from embarrassing myself. So that's just something very interesting to look back on now. Like I said, my parents were and are married, but and they tried their best. They were not abusive in any way. My mom had a really traumatic upbringing and was a very isolated woman as a stay-at-home mom. She really didn't have friends. She didn't get out. She was very isolated. And my dad, unfortunately, was not an involved dad. This was the 90s, which isn't an excuse. I know there were dads that were involved in the 90s, but he was not ready to become a dad when he did. He had a lot of friends, and he prioritized his friends. And as a kid, I remember thinking and even telling other kids yeah, I have a dad, but I just don't see him very much because he would stay out after work and then not really come home until I was in bed already. And that got better. That got a little better as we got older, but that's how it was. So with that said, the first thing that I think had a really big part to play in my avoidant personality disorder is the bullying that I was subject to in 4th, 5th, and 6th grade. Yeah, 4th, 5th, and 6th grade. So I grew up in an area of southern Wisconsin that had a really interesting class divide. There was the population that were rural, farm, blue-collar kids, which included me. And then there was a population of ultra-wealthy transplants from Chicago that moved up north to live on the lake. So I first started noticing that divide in 3rd grade, and then it became super apparent in 4th grade. And I was first bullied for not having like the name brand clothes and things like that. And then as that developed and I was learning to express myself, I found Avril Lavigne. And as someone with like some degree of daddy issues, and was just like sort of desperate for validation, but I think especially male validation right out the gate. I was really inspired by this not like other girls type of girl. I was one of the boys from that point. And yeah, me and the couple of friends that I had were really like severely bullied from 4th through I think 6th grade. And this, I don't want this video to be an hour long, so I'm not going to get into the details of that. But of course, when you're a kid and you feel like everyone is against you, it's like, that's traumatic. It feels like the end of the world. It's something when you look back, you're like, okay, I can understand now that that was not a big deal in the grand scheme of things. But that's not how that feels at the time. At the time, it's your life. It's everything you've ever known. That's the perspective that you have, is that this is my life and nobody likes me. And I'm different and I'm weird and I'm not good enough. And so, of course, that's going to take a toll. In like 7th and 8th grade, then I sort of I don't know, I hit puberty and became a lot more like sort of classically pretty. And the bullying stopped. I was never popular, but at that point I just started kind of flying under the radar a little bit more. And freshman and sophomore year of high school were quite good, especially freshman year. I had a boyfriend, and it was a very whirlwind, like, love of my life type of first love. And we dated for 2 years through freshman and sophomore year of high school. And again, when you're that age and it's like your first real relationship, 2 years is forever. So it was around the end of that relationship when my parents noticed that my mental health was no longer like at a sustainable place on its own. And I was 15 years old when I was diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder and major depressive disorder, and put on propranolol and Zoloft for the first time. And it was right after that when the main events started to take place. So I mentioned in my last video that I was 15 when I got my first job. And again, that was around the time that I started this medication, which completely changed my attitude. I went from being a very, very high anxiety person, teenager, to being almost completely careless, to being honestly quite reckless. I was really very lucky that I didn't get into more trouble in those years of my life, because I became quite reckless. I was really mean. I would say things to my anyway, that's not important. So I was put on medication, and at this first job that I worked at when I was 15 years old, I had a coworker who was a couple years older than me, who I thought was really cool because she was a couple years older. She was also this like alternative sort of person, which at the time I still was in my mind, but less outwardly so, if that makes sense. If anybody else was like a scene kid that didn't look seen, you'll understand. But anyway, so she had like the dyed hair, and which my mom wasn't letting me do at that point, and I just thought she was so cool. And she had this older boyfriend who, when I started working there, was deployed in Iraq. What year would this have been? It was around it must have been 2007 or 2008. But anyway, when I started working there, he was deployed. And when he came back, he came into the restaurant one day. I was 15 and he was 21 years old at that time. And he told his girlfriend, who he had come to the restaurant to visit, that he thought I was attractive. And for some reason, she told me that. And that was like the craziest thing I had ever heard. I was so flattered. He was this older guy, a military guy, and he thought I was cute. And I think they were kind of at the end of that relationship anyway. So they broke up at some point, and him and I started messaging on Facebook. And when I was 16 and he was 22, we met for the first time. He picked me up in the grocery store parking lot. I didn't have a license and I didn't have permission to be going anywhere with him. And he didn't want to pick me up from school. So I walked from the school to the grocery store, and he picked me up at the grocery store. And we started dating. I was 16, he was 22. And this relationship ruined my life. The whole rest of my life. Not only was he an older man, of course, who I was trying so hard to impress, but he also, I'm not a psychiatrist, but knowing him and being able to read the DSM, he was a textbook grandiose narcissist. Okay, guys, he was the life of the party and he made sure of it. He was incredibly manipulative. He was lying and cheating on me the whole time. And just constantly belittling me for acting my age, or for dressing my age, or for looking my age, or whatever it was. And I caught him cheating multiple times, and I was so naive and wanted something so bad that I allowed myself to be talked down, or he always had some sort of reasoning, some sort of excuse, some sort of story to explain what was actually going on. But he would accuse me of cheating constantly, which of course now I understand why he was doing that. But he just, I thought I would be able to talk about this in a more organized way, but it's quite overwhelming because there was so much that transpired, and also it's so hard for me to recall a lot of the details. But it was 3 years from the time I was 16 to the time I was 19. 3 years of just constant emotional turmoil and stress, and using sex to keep him around, to get him back, because I thought that's what I had to do, and just feeling like I was crazy. I would, one of, I think, the most detrimental parts of the relationship was when I would catch him in these situations where he was lying or cheating or whatever it was. And I would have these emotional reactions to that. And then he would make me feel so crazy and so, like, insane. Like I was overreacting so much because he always had some sort of story for why something looked the way that it did, but it wasn't really what I thought it was, and I was just jumping to conclusions, and I was overreacting and being too dramatic, and so that led me to feeling completely unable to trust myself. And then the way he would belittle me and like groom me to dress more sexy, dress more grown up, act more grown up, and just more sexualized. It really stopped me from being able to figure out who I was or express myself authentically. Any hope that I had for developing like healthy self-esteem or confidence was like completely immediately crushed. It was just crazy. He would like suggest that I wasn't that I wasn't like sexy enough or something like that. And so then I would try to send him like a sexy picture, and then he would say like, that's not like you. Why are you doing that? Like, you're obviously, somebody's coaching you to do that. Like, who's teaching you to do that? Just like crazy, crazy stuff. Like, I was always being accused of something, and also always being like gaslit to whenever I would accuse him of something. So that, I think that relationship really set the course for the rest of my life. I think, of course, it's a combination of things that ultimately led to me being who I am today. But if I had like one word of advice, I just wish that that as a young woman, I would have listened to the people that were warning me, because people knew, my parents knew. They didn't like it. They never met him. He refused to meet them. And they didn't like it, but they also kind of knew that I was going to do it anyway. And that was the attitude that I had. It was that this is my choice. I want to be with him. I'm mature enough to know age is just a number. And he recognizes that I'm more mature than everybody else my age, which is how I felt at the time. And of course, now it's so easy for me to see how a narcissist, or any adult that has narcissistic qualities, we'll say, how they prey on vulnerable girls. And one thing that I'm really happy about is that this is starting to become a conversation that is had more often. I do see young girls being more aware of how sick this dynamic is, which is a relief. But I just know at the time, nobody could have told me anything. I did not care. I thought that I could convince him to love me enough that it was going to be fine. And I've yet to, at 30 years old, I've yet to really fully repair my relationship with sex, which, of course, vulnerability in intimate relationships is a big, big, big issue with those with avoidant personality disorder. And yeah, it just makes it hard when you've been exploited by somebody that was supposed to love you. It makes it difficult to ever open yourself up again. And I've really never been single after that relationship. I jumped right into another relationship, and when that one ended, I jumped into this relationship that I'm in now. But they've never been healthy relationships, and they've all had the same pattern of issues that stem from this avoidant personality and the trauma that I experienced in that relationship as a teenager. And so the last topic that I sort of want to touch on in this video is if this is the result of trauma and a lot of the symptoms are the same, then why is it avoidant personality disorder and not CPTSD? And my answer is, I don't know. This is, again, one of those things that is very convoluted in the mental health sphere that is sort of confusing to me, because all personality disorders, as far as I am aware, are the result of abuse or neglect at some point in your life, normally when you're younger, which sounds to me just sort of like all personality disorders are sort of like different manifestations of CPTSD. But the reason that I don't consider myself or have not been diagnosed with CPTSD is that I don't experience flashbacks. And that's sort of the only main difference that I've been able to put my finger on. Correct me if I'm wrong, I very well could be. But I don't have flashbacks. I don't think about that time in my life hardly ever at all, really. It's just, I have to, when I trace my steps back of why I'm the way that I am now, those are the things that make sense. Those are the things that stand out. So if you're watching this and you're a young person, if an older person is, just don't do it. Just don't do it. There's a reason that they are seeking out somebody who is younger and more naive and has less confidence and has less sort of resolve in their beliefs somebody that they can manipulate and somebody that they can groom to be exactly what they want. That's the only reason. So just don't do it. It's not worth it. It could ruin your life literally forever. So that is my avoidant personality disorder origin story. Bullied as a middle schooler and then groomed and technically for years in high school. So that's all I have. I'm just telling my story. I don't really have any final thoughts. For anybody that's been following, I have been sober for I think 3 or 4 days now, this whole weekend, off of weed, and I'm doing good. It's hard. It's hard. I wish I could just go back to being complacent with doing nothing sometimes. But overall, I feel good. I feel positive. And I have another big video coming soon. So I'll see you guys then. And yeah, have a good one.